Hello, I'm Brian Sethurst in Los Angeles.
And I'm Alison Norrington in London, and welcome to the Story Hour.
Welcome back. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like us, feel free to comment, and if you want to know when the next episode is, hit that bell. Allison?
And here we are now for part two of our chat with Howe and Kate Dimbleby, who launched Stornaway in May 2020. And we're going to look a little bit more now at interactive branching narratives and also a little sneak peek at their interactive short, Life Moves Pretty Fast. Welcome back, Kate and Rue.
Thanks for having us.
Hi.
So we left off in our last episode with the full-on tutorial for Stornaway. So now we know, and we know that it can be used by storytellers, individual storytellers. We know you're talking with television production companies and studios. And so now we want to dig, both of us being storytellers, we want to dig a little bit more into the nuts and bolts. And I'm going to let Allison do that.
Okay, best jobs. Okay, so my thoughts actually when we met earlier this year is that this was like the perfect storm moment because Netflix had been playing around with interactive for a while, but then Bandersnatch hit last year, 2019, and it seemed that it was the first time really like mass commercial awareness of the fun and the design process of interactive narratives. So, but you'd been developing this way before that, right? This was something. How did you feel when you saw Bandersnatch last year and listening to people's thoughts and comments about it?
I mean, it's a mixed bag of feeling incredibly relieved that we could just say, like Bandersnatch, to explain what we were talking about, and people suddenly, a much larger amount of people suddenly got what we were talking about in a way. And could see that it was working on streaming platforms, and obviously had the Netflix sort of glitter around it. And I suppose a lot of people liked it, and it did very, very, very well, and won an Emmy, a mainstream Emmy, and that was good. The flip side of it was that some of the storytelling, some of the interactive elements of it were very kind of early stage for that. So there were people who struggled a bit with some of the choices that were made or that you had to make around things. The most often cited one is the serial choice, which is the first choice you have to make, which is just completely, it's a training wheel choice, as I think Netflix think of them. They sort of keep letting you make choices to make you understand that there's a choice on screen. But unfortunately, we're all way beyond that with links now. We're totally au fait with the idea that we have to click links. And so we want them to mean something or have some kind of substance to them. And
Well, it's like it's like a musical number in a musical. If the musical number doesn't drive the story forward, then don't have it there. And
Right.
I think Allison and I, we had a really good time dissecting that. As innovators, which you are, you always appreciate the person that takes the first step. You always appreciate the spirit of innovation. But then as storytellers and producers, you begin to look at it. And of course, every producer looks at something and says, I would do that completely differently. And so that part of your head is going, but also as interactive storytellers, I know that you are thinking of the relationship with the audience and what you're asking them to do. And if my guess is right, you're assuming that the audience is a lot more intelligent than was assumed there.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
that's
absolutely
been,
right.
yeah, absolutely. And I think,
Yeah, it's a good observation.
yeah, because Netflix had experimented with interactive before. They'd been doing quite a lot of kids content. But I think they really genuinely they didn't know, and they were wary of asking too much of their audience. Whereas I think we always think, no, if you know your audience, as long as you're hitting that tone right at the beginning, you can ask anything of them in a way, So.
I totally agree. And I think to a point, like when you're designing experiences, you have to like model the behavior that you want. So I understand why that was there and I get it. Like I know a guy, an amazing guy who we must get on the show actually, who when he hosts a party, he gets a really shitty dancer to come and be the first person to dance at his party, right? Because of that, everyone gets up and dances because nobody can be as bad as this guy, right? So there's something in that of modeling and setting it up. If that serial choice moment at some point later, in even like a tongue-in-cheek funny way, had been revisited or paid off or something, then maybe it could have been excused. I do understand. Like, I imagine Charlie Brooker sat down with like a whole kind of cat's cradle of string across the room to try and figure out how to make that work on that scale. So I get it. But I also do think that the setups and the payoffs are always important in storytelling. With interactive or branching, they need to be more so, don't you think?
Well, and it's really important to remember that Charlie Brooker and Annabelle Jones didn't have anything like Stornaway to previs their storytelling.
Well, and
So,
I also
you know,
wonder, there's a certain background that the two of you brought to this already.
Yeah.
And I think that background, which is why you both came up with Stornaway, because that background was there. You knew what the problem was, and you were able to bring forth something to solve the problem. I think that some storytellers, and I'm not knocking anybody for doing this or trying this, but there are areas of expertise. If you are not someone who understands the nature of human behavior in a story, and you're just a storyteller that pushes out the story, this may elude you a little bit. You may not be able to grasp that. But what you did from your background, again, my observation is you took what you knew, you looked at what was missing for storytellers, and I'm using the word institutionalized in the nicest way, and institutionalized what would be available to storytellers. And I think when you look at it that way, you sort of, you know what it is? It's the difference between, how do you get from, if you will, Liverpool to London without a map? And in this case, you're giving me a map that says, well, you have some choices on your journey, and which of those choices are consistent with the story you want to tell and the relationship you want to establish with the audience.
Yes. Yeah. And there's something there also about, I guess we've both worked in quite rough and ready ways, like me in Scratch Theatre and Rue in the early days of video blogging. So there's that very direct relationship with an audience that you're very aware as you grow your production team, and I've worked on much bigger theatre productions, that kind of interdisciplinary nature of working, where the writer is working with the performer, is working with the director. I think there's a very unique set of skills that are required for this kind of storytelling that are kind of interdisciplinary, and that's not necessarily available in those bigger
Alison, I go back, Alison, to those 4 levels of storytelling that we talked about years ago, which is 1, I'm telling you the story. 2, I'm inviting you into my story world, but I'm not asking you for too much. 3, I'm now sort of I'm asking you to activate. I can't even remember what they were. I'm asking you to become active in the story.
The broadcast model was like fingers in the ears, broadcast model, right?
Yep.
The second level was welcome to my world. The second model was I'm listening. The third one was welcome to my world. And the fourth one was take it, it's yours.
Yeah, I wrote these and she remembers it, but
I remember it, yeah.
But you're moving through all the levels in the same story, which is 1 is here's the story. 2 is I'm listening to what you have to say. That's the video blogging. That's where you're listening to the audience. What was the third one, Alison?
The third one was welcome to my world.
Welcome to my world. I'm giving you the chance to interact in the world. And the final one is like where fan fiction comes in, where it's take it, it's yours, make the world your own. But those were levels, but nobody has institutionalized those levels like Stornaway has.
And on that note, I think I would say about being interdisciplinary, there's all of them elements, but there's also the pacing and the timing, right? Yeah. So it's so many things. It's like spinning so many plates at once.
And I think when you're also trying to, Annabelle Jones, without wanting to go on too much about Bandersnatch, but Annabelle Jones talked while they were after making Bandersnatch about how they had to just create the whole production infrastructure. Not only did they have to solve the technology problem, but they also had to figure out how to do everything, all the budgeting, all the scheduling, all the planning. Like he'd gone out and written a script that was like 5 hours of content, and they were making a whole series worth of stuff in one episode. And they just, I guess at some level, they were just biting off a huge amount with a big budget and a huge, there was a lot weighing on that. And one of the things, I guess, is that we don't often, you get to do scratch performances, you get to muck around with things. Life Moves Pretty Fast is a very inexpensive and fast, it was very quick to make, and it was very low risk in lots of ways. So it's a completely different beast, and you can play and mess around and go back and see what's happening. I think there's something about a large production with a long running time that's both a juggernaut to make and also to watch. And I think you have to be in that place. All of those steps are really those steps you were just talking about are really important, because they're engaging somebody's trust that they're going to spend some time with you. And we're all just constantly looking at our watches. I was just watching us showing somebody a video that was just on YouTube. It was just a sort of 4-minute video of a dance performance, and you could feel everybody who was watching just getting impatient, being like, how many more minutes is this got left? You have to be aware of all of those things that are happening for an audience as they're sitting down something in the old world, where you know how long something's going to be and what you're committing to.
And what's kind of delightful is that having, Netflix have now made their own tool. I think we talked about that last week. They've made their own kind of Stornaway. We've made Stornaway for everybody else. But the idea, you see them in the interactive special of Kimmy Schmidt. I think we talked about this, Alison. Tina Fey, the writer on that, is really enjoying seeing. You can see that she's playing with that. If I give them this, if the actor does this look and just acknowledges the audience, there's a real playfulness about it, and it's really delightful to kind of see that in mainstream TV.
A year on, you can kind of feel that they've probably got the engine going, and they're understanding how to do it in lots of different ways. And they've made quite a few of them now, and they're in different genres and different. And Bandersnatch was carrying a lot of weight also of being, this is what interactive is for mainstream TV, And of course it wasn't. It was just one genre, one program. And as it's being explored in different ways, I think we're going to start seeing it happening in lots of new genres.
I think you're to the point where creatives are beginning to understand what the tool is, and I think in Kimmy Schmidt, I mean, there was, you had the writers understand, and they already knew they were breaking the fourth wall, whereas in Bandersnatch there was no fourth wall breakage. So it was kind of like, okay, you're in on this with us here now, so we're going to play with you. Therefore, you establish that relationship from the start. So we have some assets. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you also knew the characters with Tina Fey, with Kimmy Schmidt, which really helps. I think there's a whole other piece around, aside from the timing and pacing, is, if people don't know your characters, how can you, there's a lot of areas around that. In drama, interestingly, I think that's why we've been talking to a lot of people who aren't working in drama necessarily, because it is hard to make it work, so yeah.
Unless you're doing Our Town.
Yeah.
Should we have a look? I think we've got a reel of the some of the Netflix ones that I think we can just talk over, because there's no sound there. So it'd be great to have a look, because I'm interested too. Like your short that I want to show also a little trailer of too, Life Moves Pretty Fast. I really like it, because I feel like it comes across anyway with you as a character, Rue, that you didn't take it too seriously. Now, you probably did in terms of mapping it, and we'll look at that as well. But there's something about the tone, and Kimmy Schmidt as well, right? There's a little bit of like messing around kind of tone. Like there's a mischief to the choices. That's the point I'm trying to make. There's something mischievous. And I felt that with you, Rue, with Life Moves Pretty Fast. It's like this mischief that could we make happen. With Kimmy Schmidt, it's the same thing. With Bandersnatch, there wasn't that tone of mischief. So I just wonder, like, if we maybe think about, is there certain types of genre that really work well? Because I think people are inherently looking to, in a fun way, mess things up and be a bit disruptive. And that's the tone of what you guys did with your short too.
Yeah.
All right,
Are you going to play these clips? Yeah.
Let me bring this up and hope for the best.
Perfect.
Interactive, anything could happen.
I think there's a reason it started in children's. This is Captain Underpants, because of course that playfulness and cheekiness is really possible in children's, and children understand it. They're not taking the choices. Although, like the work we've done talking to kids about their feeling about interactive content, is they do feel really engaged, and they do feel quite responsible when they click the buttons. But here we go.
But they feel responsible to begin with, and then they get liberated by the fact there's not necessarily a right choice, a wrong or a right choice, and you can go back and watch with other people, talk to your friends about it, see what other people did.
Yes.
You can see here across the sort of, this is just their search screen looking at interactive now, and there's a few more that they've added on since then, which is, a dozen different shows, most of them for kids, and then some headlines. But it is, yeah, and the Bear Grylls one has the same sense of mischief and playfulness because they are story games. I mean, you know, that's the funny thing. It's taking a TV show and fusing it with a game, and you have to recognize the game element. And I think Charlie Brooker is a gamer. You know, he does a lot of he's written and recorded a lot about games. And he brought that sensibility, that sort of darker video game sensibility into it, where at the end, and of course it's Black Mirror with Bandersnatch, so it got very dark. So the point at which the mischief came in, where actually you did start to break the fourth wall a bit, and you started to get involved with the character, it was really a bit horrible. But you know, in the vein of the show, and you have to be ready for that. And actually watching kids playing the kids programs, they talk about being switched on in a different way because they are somewhere between leaning back and leaning forward and taking it all in. And they are, you know, you talked about how sophisticated viewers are. We've had a few people talk about this. Kids are just incredibly sophisticated viewers, and they demand more. They want more. They know that they're in this playful world, and they want some acknowledgement and some feedback loops of them making choices. And then
that is that whole digital native we've talked about a number of times, Allison and I, about how the neural pathways are wired differently. When I was a kid, the only time you used two hands for anything was to play the piano.
Right.
Being trained in video gaming, it's got to have some effect on the brain. And also, just knowing that anything you touch is going to respond to you. I mean, I've just bought Christmas gifts for ages 3 and 5. And both of those things that I have bought for these kids are interactive. It's inherently interactive. There is something there. So you've got this interactive generation. I'm very interested to see how they will use Stornaway in the future.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think it's been really exciting working. For that reason, we kind of opened out to working with universities and film schools, because that generation who are kind of, they just get it immediately and they're playful, and they and I think there's a lot to be learned because we haven't really done it yet about, you know, what is this relationship that we have? You know, how do I, in theatre, the director I used to work with had a kind of theory of like, they've got to know that someone's in charge because otherwise everyone freaks out. So you've got to set the rules as the kind of creator. You've got to set your rules so that everyone knows them, and they can be pretty flexible rules, but they've got to have some rules. And you know what we've experienced with some students is they're just like trying to make these crazy things that they're not even thinking about the rules. You know, it's like set the rules, set the tone, and then you can start to play. You know,
but your rules are no different than the rules of a story world.
Yes.
The canons, the character arcs, how people behave within this world, what they so it is inherently, it's like in the DNA of storytelling to begin with. All you've done is, well, not all, what you've done is brought it to this next level where there's a way, there's a framework, if you will, to enter the story world and participate.
I mean, that other element is that thing of choosing your perspective, you know, setting the perspective and the relationship between you as the author, whether you are first, second, you know, whether you and they are first, second, third person relationships, whether you're breaking the fourth wall or not, whether you're doing it tacitly or whether you're doing it explicitly. You know, we made a choice. Well, you make a choice in all of the films. You know, Life Moves Pretty Fast. We made a choice for it to be second person, like it's vlogging, but then somebody else randomly who's unseen is holding the camera. And all of those things you can just mess around with endlessly, as long as you know you're doing it and you're making a conscious choice, because people are alert to it. They're like, wait, is he vlogging? Is this just a vlog where he's holding his camera? No, there's a camera person there, but he's what are the, but we're very smart, so we get very into understanding what the rules of those are. And if you're doing it light and quick enough, then you can move through that quite quickly. But I think you do have to, you know, if you're just doing a choice for the sake of doing a choice, we're done with that. We're done with that in the 1990s with web pages. You know, it was fun to get a word that had a link to another word, but then you rapidly want to just be able to follow through something that makes sense. They don't have to be even a story. They can just, there's just some juxtaposition that makes sense or has some context there. And
why did you choose the second person? Like, why was that a choice?
That just, when the idea came out of both of us, it was about going back to the style of the vlogs that I used to do 10 years ago, that were very kind of moving, moving camera, walking along, talking to I used to hold my old Nokia phone and talk to my phone, and they had a pace to them, and they had that jump cut thing to it, and you could cover a lot of ground and do a lot of things, and it had that lightness of tone that we knew would immediately create that connection with the audience and set the tone for you, because you're already talking to somebody. You don't have to give people a reason why they've got to click something. So that felt like an easy way into it. And then we decided to separate the camera person so that it felt like you knew that it was a consciously authored short, that it wasn't just somebody messing about. There was a short film being made here, and there was some structure to it, and that seems to work.
Sorry, in terms of then you're directly addressing, like you're looking in the eye. That hadn't been done for quite a long time, actually, until House of Cards came out in 2014, and the opening scene where like the dog gets run over and he looks up and directly talks to the audience, and you're like, right? But that's what you did in this. And I like it because then you ask the questions. You're like, hey, maybe we can take a little look at it, actually. Maybe Brian could like get it up. But I love that.
I beg your pardon.
Oh, matron.
You see what I have to work with, Rue, Kate? You see what I have to work with?
Really?
All right. I'm about to show the trailer, Allison.
Roll it on.
Here we go.
It's Wednesday the 12th. It's my birthday. As I was leaving Dad, I didn't have the heart to tell him, because I'm an adult, it's going to be like every other day of my life.
Did I run the right trailer? Oh.
Just
Hello, that's good. That's the first, that was a Twitter trailer. Yeah, it was the first 10 seconds. But it gives you the idea of, very shortly after that, he talks about how I say he, it's me, but it's he. Talking about getting confused about your perspective. He talks about how every day he's going to work, he's doing the same things, putting on his headphones. He's not looking up and around. He's just arriving on autopilot, and he wants to look up and around and make some, take the world in. And then he gets to a junction, and he has to decide whether to take a nice route to work or take his order.
So just to back up a little bit, let's take the time. Tell us about the character, and tell us the story, and then we have a map that you sent us that you can walk us through that will elucidate this for us.
He is. You should describe the character.
So we meet Wolfie. Wolfie is the video blogging character that Rupert initiated back 10 years ago, and he goes around the streets talking to his camera. And anyway, we meet him on his birthday. And he is deciding which route he should take to work, because he's like, most of the time I put my headphones in, I shut the world out, and I just walk the same route. And today I'd like to go a slightly different way. And he invites the audience to help him choose. And I think the first thing you feel is like, basically, depending on what you choose, there's no right or wrong answer. You get to go through Bristol, across the Downs, you get to go through the town via a labyrinth of coffee shops, you get to meet a strange wise old man in a churchyard. There are kind of multiple timelines, different characters who you meet on the way, and depending on the route you get, you might get to meet the same character in different locations. So one of the things we really liked about it was that it was based in Bristol. The whole story is mapped in Bristol, and there are kind of it works across it as well as through the story. So you can meet these same characters, one over here on the Downs and one here in the town, and that's a real joy of playing it through, depending on how you play it through.
And it makes more sense as you replay.
What is the main character's objective?
To get to work.
To get to work.
That's all it is. He's got to get to work, and it takes him about 5 to 10 minutes to get to work. He's being impelled that way. He's got to get there. It's really, that's the kind of MacGuffin of the start and the end. And actually, it's all about the middle. And as many of these things are, they're all about the middle.
Well, let's go to the middle.
Get out as quickly as you can.
I tried to make him not go to work. That was my goal, to delay the process as long as possible.
So walk us through the map.
Well, so there's
Okay.
a meta story here as well, which is, it is about him choosing to leave his job and set up a tech startup with an interactive filmmaking tool. So there's definitely some real life meets art here. Here you've got home. You can see home and work at either
At the
end.
bottom left, yeah, as home. And the first choice you're getting there, he gets to choose Downs or town. And Downs is the kind of countryside-y route up through Bristol. And most people start off, I mean, there's a bit of nudging to get people to give them a nice day. Some people want to do the opposite of what they're being nudged to do, but people go off.
Like
and then-
Alison.
and often what happens is you get to the next thing and you're seeing Clifton Suspension Bridge, which is sort of, a beautiful Bristol landmark. And then he suddenly sees a bike and he thinks, oh, I could just take a little bit more of a detour and go to the woods across the bridge. He's really pushing it, how far he can go away on his birthday, which is something I have maybe done myself. And so he goes across and goes to the woods. And at that point, he can also just decide to, like, he's so far off piece, he can just decide to bunk off for the day and take the day off. And that's where you get the very.
Oh, that's
top
over
left.
here. Sorry, I was going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's good. So if you get there, it'll loop back to the beginning and you'll go to a slightly different version of the start, which avoids all of the kind of preamble and the setup. It just gets you right back into making the first decision again. And again, you can go back to the Downs and take the other route, which is off through the countryside-y route of the Downs. And there are various different things that can happen to you. And there's some random stuff that happens. So you get to the Downs path and you're not sure what you're choosing. There's this way or that way because he's lost. And choose this way, you end up in the woods and he ends up being terrified of a sort of strange psycho guy who is lurking in the woods and finds his way back eventually after that. But it sort of sparks a existential crisis in him where he just can't. He's so frustrated that he can't make any choices in his life. He just doesn't know what the answers are of what he's doing in his life and how can he make a decision about how to make better choices.
Which I guess is the theme of all your films.
And another, he will in a bush meeting a guy that if you take the other route, you meet this birdwatcher, a friend of his on the street. And if you end up in the bush, you'll meet him, the birdwatcher in the bush, which he's made reference to in the other timeline. And then those two different timelines make sense of themselves. And eventually you will also meet this head of production from his work,
she's my favorite character.
He's very.
This is her?
This is
yeah,
her
that's
there.
her. We posted it on Twitter today, and the actress said, "Look, you can click on my head."
This is a clickable. It should say this is a. Although you navigate the story through watching it on video, you can use this story map to jump into any point of the story. So again, we use the prompts of the Bristol locations. It maps nicely onto Bristol locations. We use them as prompts to come up with things that might happen in those places.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this story map,
You know what's great? I mean, this is Candyland. I mean, this is something that is familiar, in terms of making choices in a board game that is set up like this. Aside from the fact that, as I am fond of saying, Rupert and Kate, I'm so glad that you got the story out because no one should have to die with this inside of them.
Right.
I should say there is a beautiful moment as well where the reason we're here and made this tool and everything. If you go to the church, which not many people do go to the church because I don't know, religion's unfashionable these days. If you go into the church, there's a really beautiful moment where, unbeknownst to me, Rupert used one of my songs as the soundtrack to that little moment, and it's very it's talking about pace and timing.
Yeah,
it's because he's only chosen to use music in really that one story island, so you have this incredible moment of just opening out and just breathing, and it really is kind of, in a serious way, it's what actually the story is about, which is a kind of man who's lost in midlife, trying to find space, trying to find reason, trying to find, meaning.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Where does the audience see this? Where can our viewers see this now?
The easiest way to get to it is lifemovesprettyfast.io. And that take you directly to playing it. If you follow us on Twitter at Stornaway_IO, there's I think a pinned tweet at the moment is our link to that story map, and we'll
put the links below so that the audience can get to it really quickly. And then my next question is, if I'm a storyteller and I want to use this tool, one, how do I use it? And other than the tutorial, how do I get support for using it?
Stornaway.io, go there and sign up for it, and then talk to us. See, like when you sign up, you'll get an email from me and Kate and reply and say hello, or just follow us on Twitter at Stornaway_io, Rupert Howe and Kate Dimbleby, and just have a chat. We're trying to find ways of bringing everybody who's doing story games and interested in talking together and using more, you know, rather than trying to create some new site with a community at the moment, just using things like Twitter and hashtag.
Well, I'm going to suggest something and commit Allison ahead of time.
Okay.
So, but if you want to create a Stornaway event, we would be happy to host it and broadcast it online. This is something I think that storytellers, first of all, whether you use this tool or not as a storyteller, you need to know about it, because I do think it will affect the way you think about telling stories, whether you're making them interactive or not. It's just a layer that I think everyone should be aware of. So, Allison, I committed you ahead of time.
It's okay.
But this could be a really great event. We'll use social channels and whatnot and set it up so that it works, so that people can exchange and discuss, and we'll do it live, so that it's actually working. Because I'm at the point where first of all, from the map that we just looked at, I totally get it, and I also want to thank you for making it a fun map, you know, because it takes a lot of the pressure off. And if I had seen this before the tutorial, that would have been great. So maybe we'll just add this in as a photo. We'll figure out a way to do it. But we're almost out of time. So I just want to see if Allison has any burning questions that she needs to ask, because she's been working with you for a while, and so she understands this.
It's not so much burning questions, but there's, for me, still things to explore, which we won't do now, between the image that we showed last time of the kitchen wall all pinned out, and then what we've seen from Life Moves Pretty Fast, and now the map that we've looked at today. Now, there's a series of processes between each of those things, right? And I think for me that you guys have really nailed how to make it work. And I think storytellers that are interested in ending up with the result of that map and understanding the steps you take to get there, like really, I know that, I mean, I've logged on and I've kind of played around with it too. It's a real great opportunity, because even in terms of whether you're telling a traditional story of a hero's journey or a collective journey or whatever it might be, there's still an arc that your character goes on.
Definitely.
I was pleased that Brian asked that question about the objective, because I think one of the things that we've only really just gone, oh yeah, which is that in a way, because media is so fast moving these days, actually the beginning and the end, like they often seem like the really important bits, and they are in a sense, in that they get you in and they get you out. But actually between those two places, if those are strong, then you've got an amazing place, you've got a playground. But it is holding that tension, isn't it, through all the way across,
exploring what you can do with that motivation.
Well, if your characters are compelling and your story world is compelling, and the people that are watching / playing, what I call the viewsers, because they're using it and they're viewing it, if that's all compelling enough, then you're in the story world and you're compelled to move forward, and then all the rules of the story world apply, from character growth and development to cliffhangers to regular canons to, like, and then when you break a canon, like if this is an interactive zombie world, anyone who knows zombie canon will freak if the canon is broken, but it's always fun to break the canon and to watch people freak. I did want to say a thank you as a storyteller, because I've been living in the world of innovation and mostly XR, VR. And it took years for best practices to be established. They're still being established. So it was like groping through the dark, being innovative and sharing best practices within a community. The technology was the foundation, but even the camera companies and the people that were developing the technology were not able to develop best practices for post-production, which now exists thanks to Metal and Adobe Premiere. So what we have right now is an institutionalized framework, because I was thinking of Skam, the interactive show that came out of Scandinavia. I think it was Norway, or what's Norway?
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like, well, what did they do and what did they figure out? But now, to have sort of a best practices as a foundation, which I'm sure the community will add to and press and say, why can't you do this? And can we do this? And that's what the value is of community today. But I just want to say thank you, because this is the first big step. And you know, the Mill actually developed a post-production process for VR, and they have worked it out, but they never licensed it and they never shared it. And it would have been really valuable. So the fact that this is available to every storyteller, to be able to have a starting place, and then to be able to inform the evolution of the product is great.
Yeah. Well, and
thank you. I mean, having that as a starting point and creating, a non-proprietary way of engaging with this in a way that we can all, get past all of that horrible workflow and unknowns. You know, I've watched the iDocs community, interactive documentary that's gone into immersive here, based in Bristol but worldwide, struggle with this for years, and all of these custom build solutions, and people just creative producers not knowing what they're doing and having ideas, and then it being expensive, difficult, painful, or just impossible to realize them.
Well, this product is coming from storytellers for storytellers.
Yes.
So,
and on our wall is we've got a whole list of where we want to be able to integrate out to. So that's the idea, is, you know, it's for storytellers. It should be that nimble and like a community that then can deliver out on multiple platforms.
Out to YouTube, out to Unity, out to immersive, to 360 VR and on from there.
But starting with the storytellers. Yeah.
What I love about it is, usually when technology is developed for a while, it's the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
And this is a true collaboration where technology and storytelling is concerned. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, this has been great. The two great segments. Thank you both so much for your time. And I, Allison is the academic among us. And so she has the knowledge of where you take this into the next generation for them to actually be able to use something. So she and I have talked about this and how this gets taught. So I'm very excited for storytellers, and Allison having a commercial background and then going into academics. That's the best combination, because you have someone who has the experience. So I really look forward, like I said earlier, to Allison, the next generation, understanding this and being able to contribute to its iteration.
Yeah, I mean, I've made a couple of intros already for Kate and Rue.
Of course you have.
Yes. But I think just to add to that, yes, I come with the academic side, but also firmly got a foot in commercial. And I've always liked crossing over those two, because the academic theories feed into the commercial markets, and then the commercial market behavior feeds back into the academic research. And that's one of the things I really liked about Stornaway, because you've got the design thinking, you've got the background that you've brought into it of the philosophy of storytelling, and then you're testing it out with students and with filmmakers and storytellers in a commercial world. So I would be an absolute champion to keep supporting you and shouting you out whenever I can, because I'm quite excited, like Brian said, to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And actually, when you were saying, how are you going to get the support for the storytelling? I mean, we are asking ourselves that, aren't we? Because, we've been looking at the pie chart of our time going, but actually making these connections with you guys, it feels like that's going to grow. And suddenly, actually, there are all these people out there who can bridge this world with us,
Well, time to be prepared to scale. So I just want to say, not only have you created a great product that you've introduced today, but clearly you've created two brand ambassadors in Allison and myself. So thank you for being with us today. And I really look forward to that event, to the Stornaway event. It's something that we can collaborate on and something that our audience can look forward to. So For you watching, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell if you want to know our next episode. Allison, thank you as always for being my collaborator and partner in crime. And thanks to our guest today, Rue and Kate. And we'll see you next time on the Story Hour.
Thank you.